Without any further delay, I'd like to welcome Sheriff Gualtieri. He's the Sheriff of Pinellas County and has served with the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office for 35 years. Sheriff Gualtieri also serves on the Board of Directors of the Florida Sheriff's Association, the Major County Sheriff's Association, and the Boys and Girls Club of the Suncoast. Welcome, Sheriff. You are recognized, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senators, and thank you for having me today. Take this opportunity to, by background, talk a little bit about the Stoneman Douglas Commission, what we did, and then get into some of the findings and the recommendations. So as you know, the legislature passed Senate Bill 7026 and formed the commission. Its statutory mandate was to, short version, figure out what happened, report on the facts, and then provide some recommendations as to how to improve the system. Senate Bill 7026, 105 pages of very, very substantial changes that have an opportunity to make Florida schools safer. But with that said, there is an opportunity to make schools safer, and in some cases they may be a little bit safer today than what they were, but they're not there. We're not there. And that the schools in Florida today need to be safer. And there are a number of provisions in 7026 that I know that you all, members of the legislature, expected to be carried out that have not been carried out. And there's not the right sense of urgency. There's not the right sense of moving the needle fast enough and far enough. And these districts have to comply with what you all put in law. And there are a number of things that just haven't been done. So we have to, and my recommendation to you all is that you focus on compliance with 7026. Before you start looking at additional bold initiatives, new initiatives, let's make sure that what you already put in place is fully implemented and is making the difference that you intended that it make. So there are things in 7026 that are mind-boggling to me as to why they haven't been done. So as an example, is you all said that there needs to be a good guy with a gun on every campus. There needs to be a safe school officer on every campus of the state, every charter, every elementary, every middle, and every high school. And what you all put into the law was that the districts, in cooperation with law enforcement, shall assign a safe school officer. A safe school officer is defined as a police officer or a deputy sheriff employed by a police department or a sheriff's office, a police officer employed by the school board police department if they have one, or somebody that's designated as a guardian. And it says that one of those shall be assigned to every campus. Well, you got school districts and school boards that are playing games with that. And they're playing these mental gyrations, these verbal gyrations with that. And they're saying that assigned doesn't mean you actually have to have somebody there. That you can just have somebody assigned to 2 or 3 schools and that complies with the law. That is intellectually dishonest, it's disingenuous, and it's not complying with the spirit and intent that we have safer schools. When parents send their kids to school in the morning, they have an absolute right to expect those kids are coming home alive in the afternoon. And if we want a different outcome than what happened at Stoneman Douglas on February 14, 2018, we've got to do it differently. You always do what you've always done, you're always going to get what you always got. And what we got was not good. And 3 minutes and 51 seconds, that's all it took. 3 minutes and 51 seconds, Nicholas Cruz shot and or killed 34 people. On the first floor alone, 1 minute and 44 seconds, 24 people shot or killed, short order. We cannot, as much as we want to, be assured that no matter what we do, that one of these events will not occur again. As hard as it is to say, I'll tell you what I believe 3 things are for sure. 1, it's going to happen again. The question is when and where. But the more important question is, what have we done differently to drive a different outcome that's going to mitigate the harm? That's the most important question because it's going to happen. And we should all strive for prevention. You can't prevent it. Harm mitigation should be the focus, And we should, again, fully implement all of the requirements before new spending. One of the things that we also know, we lead into this, something you should know, is that there is no set of indicators that is going to tell us who the next school shooter is going to be. And if you ask anybody that's looked at this, whether it's the FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit, the U.S. Secret Service Behavioral Threat Assessment Unit, or anybody that's looked at this, there is no set of indicators that's going to tell us this person is going to be the next school shooter or this one is not. But what we do know is that history will help inform us about these best practices about harm mitigation. And we looked at the last 20 years and the number of K through 12 active assailant events over the last 20 years, and there were 46 of them. In 43 of the 46, they were committed by insiders. Insiders mean current or former students. That means that the people who committed these acts were authorized to be where they were at the time they committed the act. So what does that tell us? It tells us that all this discussion about single ingress and egress and electronic locks and magnetic systems and all this ain't going to matter. Because the people who were committing these were authorized to be where they were at the time they committed it. Now, I'm a believer we should work in that direction. I think that physical site enhancements and hardening and single ingress and egress are a good thing to do. But as far as a priority is concerned, 43 out of 46 were committed by somebody who was authorized to be there, who was an insider. The other thing is that the majority of these events, they were committed by people with handguns. Not long guns, not rifles, handguns, which means they are easily concealed and quickly produced. So you got insiders who are authorized to be where they are. They can quickly produce the weapon and wreak their havoc, affect their harm at their will, at their discretion, and they do it fast. In the majority of these incidents, over with in less than 4 minutes. Cruz, 3 minutes and 51 seconds. 23 on the first floor, 1:44. The other thing that in the majority of these, they are stopped not by cops, but by school staff. Why? Because they're the ones that are there. They're the ones that are capable of doing it. That was tried at Stoneman Douglas. Aaron Feiss had been told by one of the kids that there was shooting going on in the building, and he went in unarmed to do what he could do to save those people and to take action against the shooter. Chris Hickson, 20-year Navy veteran, military police officer, concealed carry permit holder, he went in unarmed, and as soon as he went in, he was shot. He crawled across the floor, got in a place of safety. Nicholas Cruz was about 20 yards away down the other end of the hall. Nicholas Cruz advanced down the hall, and he executed him. No doubt in my mind that if Chris Hickson had a gun, he would have at least tried to kill Cruz and save people, save himself. You got to have people there that can take quick, effective action. There's no doubt in all of our minds that one person shot or killed is too many. One person's too many. But one's better than 34. And it's going to happen again. The question is when or where. We've got to mitigate the harm before we do anything else and have the right infrastructure in place and the people there that are capable of doing that. So when you look at Peterson, the SRO, who just terrible, a coward, somebody who failed, who got to that east door of Building 12 and heard gunshots and heard the gunshots that were killing Coach Feiss and ran and went about 50 yards south by the 7-8 building and stood there for 48 minutes and didn't move for 48 minutes. While he's doing that, you had people that were going in who could have mitigated the harm. So when Peterson got there, Peterson didn't get to the door. He didn't get to the door until 23 people were shot or killed. So if it wasn't Peterson, it was somebody that did what they were supposed to do, they weren't there fast enough. You got to have enough people there that can take this effective action. And that's why predominantly these things are stopped by school personnel, because the schools are no different than the community. 16 buildings, 45 acres, 3,300, you got one cop, you can't be everywhere. So this is why we suggest that there be an emphasis on these harm mitigation strategies as opposed to the prevention strategies. That can be down the road, but we've got to do this first. We talked about the FSSAT, talked about SESHRE. Some of these other requirements in here. So getting into the Guardian program, which is what I was just talking about, a segue into this. Right now in Florida, again, it requires that there be a safe school officer on every campus, cop or a guardian. You have 25 districts that are using the Guardian program out of 67. You only have 2 districts that are maximizing the authority under current law. Current law allows the districts to implement the Guardian program for anybody who is other than predominantly a classroom teacher. And there's some exceptions to that for former law enforcement. But you only have 2 out of the 25 that are doing that. The other 23 have dedicated guardians. So they are hiring people, and they are that good guy with the gun. They are the person that's there that's armed, but they only have 1. So in a couple of the counties, in a few of the counties, and this is wrong. My colleagues are wrong about this. In some of the counties, you've got school boards that want to authorize the Guardian program, but the sheriff in that county is refusing to do it. And I suggest to you that you need to change that. And if the school board says they want it, the sheriff should be required to do it. Sheriffs need to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And if the school board wants it, is that sheriff should be mandated to train the people and to comply. At the same time, we need to do more, better, differently than what we have. This has to be not what we want, not what we like, not what we desire in the perfect world we don't live in, but what can we live with? Prior to February 14th, I was one of those people that thought cops were in the best position to affect school safety. Cops were the ones that should do this. I changed my view. My views changed based upon data, based upon evidence, based upon living this thing for the last 10 months, based upon what I think is the right thing and not based on ideology. This has to be based on reality, not ideology. It has to be based upon what we can do, not what we want to do. We have, right now in Florida, today as we sit here, we have about 1,500 openings in police departments and sheriff's offices across Florida for police officers. We have about 3,900 schools in Florida. Only about half have SROs. So if you take those 2,000 plus the current 1,500 openings, that's 3,500. Where are we going to get them? So for those who say we need to have only cops doing this, it can't happen. And while we're having this discussion about it, we have a vulnerability every single day, and we're leaving the kids exposed every single day because we don't have enough. Now on top of that, you got a money issue. And the money issue to do that would probably cost somewhere around $400 million. But even if the dollars rained out of the sky, we don't have enough cops. We cannot do it. We only hire about 10% of the applicants. We wash out about 90%. The applicant pool has drastically reduced. The qualified applicant pool, the good applicant pool has drastically reduced over the last few years. So when we look at that, and we look at the current situation where we have 1 person on every campus, it is not enough. 2 is better than 1, 3 is better than 2, 4 is better than 3. I am not suggesting that we go out there and we just en masse arm teachers and arm school personnel. What I am suggesting is that 2 is better than 1, 3 is better than 2, and 4 is better than 3. And we should do it in a very selective way with rigorous selection criteria, rigorous backgrounds, polygraphs, psychologicals, everything we need to do and we do for cops, do it the right way, with rigorous training, with not just throwing rounds down range at some target, but weapon retention training, site acquisition training, shoot, don't shoot scenarios. All of that will give them the greatest tools to be effective. And people say in the parade of horribles, well, what about this and what about that? And what this person might do this and they might do that. Maybe. But there's no greater parade of horribles than dead kids. We can mitigate those risks. There's risks in everything. But we got to do something. If we want a different outcome, we've got to do it differently. And I suggest to you that the schools of this state should maximize what you have given them in law. And for the 65 districts that don't authorize that coach, that counselor, that assistant principal, a guy like Chris Hickson, who's a military guy, military police officer, got the right skill set, who wants to do it, and they won't let him do it, they need to. And I also suggest that for those teachers who want to do it, who meet all the criteria, we should let them do it. Because why shouldn't a Chris Hickson, who walked into that building to save kids' lives, unarmed, why shouldn't they be able to protect themselves? Why shouldn't they be able to, when he's laying on that floor and Cruz is coming down that hallway, why shouldn't he be able to try and save his own life?